Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm going to call to order February 1st, 2021 Finance and Audit Committee meeting, and I'm going to read the statement of announcement. A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of February 1st, 2021 Finance and Audit Committee meeting was distributed on January 28th, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreter, mobility assistance, and other assistance will be provided to the individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance. So can I get a motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Agenda is passed as written. Next item, the minutes from the January 4th, 2021 meeting are, of course, included in your packet today, and I need to get a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes from January 4th, 2021 are passed as written. The fifth item on our agenda are capital purchases for vehicle replacement plan, and Chris Clark is going to lead this discussion.
If everyone will flip to page 21 in their packet, referring to the red numbers in the bottom corner. Give you a second to get there. Do you have a spare packet for any other folks here or not? They don't have to have it. I'm just wondering if you had one. Everybody there, committee members? All right, so this is the actual kind of synopsis and request here. So basically, when I got here, I did a review of our fleet, and primarily our focus being the regional centers as we look at kind of age of what we have out there. And unfortunately, it's like a lot of the other things going on around here. We have a lot of deferred maintenance issues that are cropping up all over the place. And in fact, at the conclusion of this, I want to talk to you about the capital budget as it relates to the question that was posed about the VDI $500,000 and how we're going to use those funds, because something has cropped up. So anyways, the chart, if you look at the chart there, you can see most of our vehicles are very old. We've got around 20 vehicles that are 5 years or less, and then just about everything else is 10 years or older. We've got 79 of our 124 vehicles that are over 15 years old. Now, out in the provider world, well, Medicaid sets a vehicle's life at 3 years, which I think is ridiculous as far as depreciation is concerned. So what I've always done is tried to study as a consultant what the actual useful life is of a vehicle, and I've always landed on about 8 years as being a reasonable time period. So here, though, I think it's a little bit longer because we don't do a lot of driving. We're not going off campus really long distances. So I did stay with the 8 year just as a general target, but just for the purpose of this analysis. But when 64% of your vehicles are over 15 years old, which is more than double almost double the targeted desired life, we obviously have a situation that we need to deal with. The vehicles right now, we are meeting with operations, meaning Rufus Britt, facility administrators, and Debbie DeTroya, who's our regional finance director. All of us are trying to develop a structure that ensures that we use our vehicles in the most efficient manner, because when we get around to looking at the actual vehicles and the ones we're looking at replacing and dig into the number of miles on these vehicles that we have, you'll see that they're very old, but don't have many miles on them. So, you know, if you're driving a vehicle that's 15 years old, and you only have 20,000 miles on it, you know, you have to ask yourself, is there a better way to meet our transportation needs? So with that being said, we still need these vehicles that are being replaced, regardless of that study being done. That assessment and review is taking place now. And as we go through the additional phases of our vehicle replacement strategy, we're going to adapt and revise our recommendation based on any solution we may be able to come up on related to maybe a transportation pool, a sharing mechanism, some type of manner in which we can reduce our cost on our vehicles, because unfortunately our vehicles are running $60,000, $70,000 each, and we're driving them 20,000 miles. That's $3.50 a mile you're spending just on the cost of the vehicle itself, which the IRS reimbursement rate is like 58 cents or something. So that kind of gives you an idea, which includes the cost of the vehicle inside it. So that kind of gives you an example of how inefficient we are in the way we use our vehicles. So if you look at item 3 on page 21, this is kind of the way we prioritize things. We're going to focus mainly on those vehicles that are transporting people. Initially ADA vehicles, so this is folks in a wheelchair that need a ramp or some other type of ability to access and get inside of a vehicle. And then non-ADA vehicles are next, that are in poor or fair condition. And then we'll look at our central office vehicles that are in poor or fair condition, because we do have staff driving those long distance. I think Kevin shared stories where internal audits broken down on the side of the highway many times. I say many, but several, I guess.
Yeah, you have staff time, because then they're.
So you know, that is an issue, but it's not anymore. It's not more important than transporting our folks safely. So as you see, we've got a priority here. It's gonna be a while before we get down into 3C in that area, because we've got so much that we need in 3A and B. You know, that's probably gonna be year 3 or 4 before we actually get down into that area. If you look at page 22, what we've done is we've assessed all of our vehicles. We've got a form that everyone's filled out, and Debbie Troya, who I don't know if she's gotten on yet or not. Debbie, have you been able to join us or not yet? She is working with facility administrators to grade all of our vehicles and really make sure that we assess the true needs. And we have landed on batch 1 of our 2021 overall strategy. If you look at our capital budget, we asked you to earmark or to agree to set aside $1,520,000 for vehicle replacement this year. And I think we're going to be well under that actually by the end of the year, but this is one piece of that 1.5 million. And so we're asking that we can purchase 12 ADA vehicles at $825,000 approximately, with tax, title tag, and all that. We are also going to sell through state surplus these vehicles. They are not adequate to serve even as a spare, and we anticipate getting about $13,000 is all, which that tells you a lot about the shape of these vehicles for all 12. And so the net, we need about $810,000 to purchase these. And the thing about these vehicles is we've been able to contact Palmetto Bus Sales, which is on state contract. And if you look in your packet, pages, I guess it's like page 8 through 19, 20, in that area is information on these vehicles, and they are very expensive. We've got Candace Golston here, our procurement director. If you have questions in regards to these vehicles and state contract and all that, but she's called around. We're going to try and get vehicles off the lot if we can, so that we can get these vehicles in service. And every one of these at this point, I think, Candace, is on the lot, but some could be sold out from under us by the time we get a PO cut.
Correct.
And so The other decision point we're asking is whether we finance these or not. Now, and as it relates to that discussion, I understand Commissioner Malthus's point. What I'm trying to do is look at our overall long-term needs from a capital perspective. And honestly, if I could summarize the condition of our facilities and really aggregate it, we probably could use about $50 million right now just to bring our facilities up to speed. We've got 2 grids that are out. We've got food retherm equipment that's out. We've got poor furniture. We've got vehicles galore. We've got roofs, HVACs that are R22 that have to be converted. We have paving projects. We have rusting pipes. We have fire panels that are out of date that are no longer supported. So my issue is, generally, I don't believe in using cash reserves for capital purchases. Cash reserves are for operations. People that use cash reserves for capital just to stay out of debt generally back themselves in a corner and don't have the liquidity and the flexibility in their cash that they need to take care of things that are operational or to be ready for a rainy day. The issue with our situation is, while we may be climbing up in our cash, we don't need to get complacent because FMAP is going to go away eventually, and we've got a lot of issues sitting out there, even in regards to the state budget, that there's so much uncertainty out there that we need to conserve our cash and use it wisely. So if we end up with $35 million at the end of the year, which I haven't finalized our cash flow projection yet, that's only 17 days of operations. That's not healthy. Providers should have, in my opinion, at least 2 months operating for an agency our size. So I'm recommending that if you look under the summary under item 6, I'm recommending that we purchase these 12 vehicles at a cost not to exceed $825. I recommend selling through state surplus 11 vehicles. 1 of them has already been sold. So the 11 other vehicles for anticipated $12,000. And recommend that we finance an amount not to exceed $810 through the state master lease program. Now I know Commissioner Rawlinson, I think you talked to the governor or someone about the state master lease program, and I know Mary has as well. So I didn't know.
I talked to the governor.
I didn't know if there was anybody that wanted to comment on that, because I know that was the request the last time, is how is this going to be perceived by the legislature if we're out there borrowing money, where we just now are getting out of our financial situation.
Well, I contacted Senator Alexander's office because he is the chairman of our
Can you hear her?
Senate Finance Committee. Usually that's what I'm called. But, they did not see any kind of like a political negative of using this money, but that's what it's there for, is that state agencies do not have to use capital to fund things like automobiles. And frankly, when I was running the board, I never did use capital for things like that. I always borrowed money. So we had our houses on a regular, just like a family would, like kind of on a regular replacement schedule. When one would roll off of financing, somebody else would get a vehicle, and we just kind of kept that going. So I didn't see it. We didn't get any report from anybody we contacted, and Angie Willis on our behalf reached out to the operators of the program, and they basically said that's what it's there for.
I have just a question, before Stephanie jumps in, if she wants to comment on it as well. But based on the usage of the vehicle, low mileage, not really, when we purchase these things, we really, like you said, we kind of lose what, $3.50 $3.50 a mile or something? Yeah, right.
Only drive at 20,000 miles,
Right.
yeah.
So are there any leasing programs that we would want to consider? Was that looked into, a better way to?
All right, so great question. 2 things on that. One is the state fleet leases, they're ending their ADA leased vehicle program. That's another thing that I brought data in here for. We've got 7 vehicles, is that right, Candace? That are leased with the state, and $724 a month plus 56 cents a mile. If you do a lease purchase analysis on leasing vehicles through them, you really have to drive a ton to make it worth its while. And then if you go to the leasing through like Enterprise or some of these other entities that are out there, I've run analysis at that in regards to that for my clients, and they never turn out favorable. The reason is for leasing, number one, we can buy vehicles cheaper than they can generally because we have a state contract, which is comparable to a fleet program. We get cheaper auto insurance because we're with the state. We get to buy, we're property tax exempt. If we own the vehicles, if we lease, we don't. We're not property tax exempt, so we're going to pay probably $1,500 to $2,000 a year in property tax because it's based on the cost of the vehicle, and I think that's probably close. So there's a lot of things you lose with the lease, plus you never own the thing. And so you're in a constant state. You know, if I'm thinking we can get 10 years out of these vehicles, you'd have to compare a lease for 10 years to a straight out purchase to see how that comes out. And it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna be favorable. I can run those numbers if you want, but I've done it, you know, pretty much my entire career, and the only time I've ever analyzed it where it was made sense was for like maintenance trucks for some reason, is where we're the only ones that, and it really wasn't a big savings. It was basically comparable.
So with the leasing of these vehicles, mainly vans, typical leases tend to operate within like every 2 or 3 years you get a new vehicle. You don't stick with that lease for 10 years. So you're saying that we would stick with a lease for 10 years versus
Now you're
switching
stuck with
out?
the lease payment for 10 years. Whereas if I just buy it outright, the lease payment's over in 4 or 5 years. I can run that analysis for you.
I just was curious,
That's a great question, and it's,
like if it, you know, just, let's just see.
you know, the lease, like I said, I've looked at enterprise leases,
Right.
and I've got, well, I say I have clients. I had some clients that were in that are now getting out of it because they realize that it's a huge, you know, like one of them in particular emailed me since I got this job, and he's like, you know, what do you think about these leases? It looks like we're really losing our shirt on them. I said, yeah, you know, you guys didn't ask me about it because I was their auditor.
Yeah.
I said, but I would have told you. He's like, yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. So the problem with the enterprise is they're making a profit margin, and they've got to make money. And so that's coming out of your pocket.
And what's the problem with the state lease?
They're getting out of the ADA vehicle business.
Which is what we need. So we kind of need those ADA.
We actually have to purchase these 7 or turn them back in, what is it, 60 months?
60 months, but it appears to me, we've had some of them longer, and I guess they didn't fall off or access to purchase because of whatever, I guess it was getting out of releasing, so they wouldn't be able to, you know, issue a new one. So there's a few that I've looked at today that we probably should have purchased maybe a year or 2 ago. So it's a 60-month lease.
I think the only other question that I would ask is, how do you have a van as a 2009, only have 20,000 miles, and it's in poor condition? I'd want more detail on that. You know,
Well,
if it's the lift, I understand. Things are temperamental. You're not gonna be able to hear him, that's for sure.
I didn't hear her for the record. I guess y'all know that. I mean,
So now,
Ruth is speaking right now,
Who?
so come closer, please.
you mean Mary when she was talking, or now that Rufus?
Mary's fine. I'm talking about the
Okay.
person over the
Rufus.
phone that's trying to talk. I can't hear a thing.
They think you're under the water on the phone, that's how bad it is.
I was behind the television. How about now, Barry?
Can you hear him
I
now?
can hear you fine now, but I don't know about her. I thought there was something that was.
Than anybody
That's
else.
Rufus.
It's just Rufus.
All right.
There's,
Real briefly, Commissioner, I'll address Mary's comment. Mileage can sometimes be misleading. A lot of times we buy vehicles, they have low mileage, but we buy them, they're not in the greatest condition. And because I did some research too, when Chris and I talked about one of the replacements, I said, how can this be? So I called the facility administrator. He indicated that one, the roof leaks, and then also that the lift is broken. And so he said, ever since we bought this vehicle, which we bought used, it's been in the shop more than it's been on the road. So again, it's one of the,
Lemon law, huh?
I can't speak to that because I'm not there on site, but those are just some of the comments from the facility administrators. May not hold
Yeah.
true for every vehicle, but for the one that had.
But-
that was just a comment.
But to Mary's point, we've got again, thank you to Debbie DeTroy. I'm sorry she couldn't get on with us.
She has a lot of information.
She's made a list of all of our transport vehicles, period. And only a few of them are driving more than 10,000 miles a year. So we're going to be studying how to get more utilization out of these vehicles and look at pooling them. You know, do we need to buy bigger vehicles and do a CDL with like routes on the camp? You know, we're just going to study it.
Or do we need to get out more? Ultimately, that's kind of what I'm looking at too. Do we need to get
I
off
thought your
campus
question was,
more?
how's a van that old
Yeah,
in such bad
it is,
condition?
but still, you know, it's just, but I want to tell you from history, those Goshen vans, those big vans, roof leaking is not unusual. Very, very common actually. And those lifts, we literally had to take the door off the lift after they came back from Disney World one time because we couldn't get the guy off the van because we couldn't. So we had to go to Walmart at midnight and buy a wrench set to take the door off so we could get the poor man out. That's how bad I mean, they could really be bad.
And these are Starcrafts, so these are not Goshens, and they're much, you know, if you talk to providers that are running these, they're much better vehicles, better made. The Goshens historically have always presented problems and providers hate them. They're like, you know, it's the worst thing I've ever bought. So we are aware of that, and as a result, looking at Starcraft All-Star Ford chassis, which are the higher quality and more durable ADA vehicles. But I do feel like there's an opportunity for us to provide our transportation on campus and off campus in a more economical manner. But we still need 12 vehicles. I mean, you can't argue with 79 of them over 15 years old that we don't need at least 12. So I wanted to go ahead and move forward with the recommendation with the understanding and the promise that we are going to be studying alternatives.
And also, if we go out to a doctor's appointment for someone who doesn't need a wheelchair van, do we have automobiles available? So we're not firing up the big old bus to take one person to the doctor's office.
We'll be looking at all that, plus logistic care. We've got some campuses that are tying into logistic care, and then others have been told because they're ICFs, logistic care can't pick them up, which is Medicaid transportation. So Debbie and we've got a long to-do list. One of our to-do list items is to figure out, because I've researched logistic care and I can't see anything on their rules that say you can't transport institutionalized or ICFID or nursing home patients. So why one logistic care operator is saying we can't pick you up because it's against the rule, but we have other regional centers that can. So we're diving into that as well. That's the other component of medical transportation.
But it still gets down to the fact that we have bad vehicles in poor condition.
And an atrophied transportation management program. We were on the call again this morning with Debbie, or this afternoon with Debbie Troy. She has over 30 years at Witten Center. Is that right?
Yep.
She's super knowledgeable. She's very, very good at her job. She was only at Witten Center, and now she's branched out, and she's kind of our central office regional center person, if you will. And she's spotting all these issues across the campuses and all these inconsistencies. And you'll see that in the procurement audit when Jeff Kevin goes over that. But we are working on that, and we recognize it. And what's happened is We've got transportation managers at some facilities, and at other facilities, everybody just left up to their own accord. So we've got to bring some more regimented and more structure to how we do things like this at the regional centers.
Yeah. Barry or Stephanie or?
Well, I'm not necessarily, I don't necessarily think you have to pay cash for everything you buy. I'm not saying that, but the problem that I have with this entire matter is not that we need 12 vehicles. The problem I have is this is the beginning of what you're talking about borrowing money for. I'm not opposed to necessarily borrowing money for 12 vehicles, but what I'm opposed to is every month you coming back saying we need to borrow $500,000 for this, we need to borrow $1 million for that, we need to borrow $1 million for this. And y'all are expecting us to fix every problem we've had in the last 15 years because the previous commissions refused to recoup money from the providers. And now we're expected to do all this stuff all at one time. And it's just not realistic. It's just not realistic to do everything at one time or even in the next year or two. But I'm not necessarily saying that 12 vehicles is a bad thing to borrow money for. Vehicles is realistic to borrow money for. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I know how this is. I can feel how this is going, and I don't even know yet about, well, we need $1 million for this, or we need $500,000 for that. And you're going to very quickly get out of hand if you don't look out. That's all I'm saying.
All right, a couple things to your point, not to argue, but just to give a counterpoint. One, the master lease program, you can finance extremely limited items. We've got on this year's project $7.3 million that we need to spend, and only 1.8 of it is eligible for financing. The rest, they're not going to finance pipes. They're not going to finance roofs. They're not going to finance software. They're not going to finance fixing the HVACs and our paving. These are tangible assets that a bank can come and pick up if we default. That's the only thing they'll finance. So our finance, out of this year's money, we need $3.5 million of our own money plus 3.5 of what we already planned on spending. That's our annual budget, if you will. And then 1.9 on top of that, plus 1.8 financing just for this year's needs. If we don't do the lease, we need our normal 3.5 that we would spend this year, which they didn't finance for what, 3 years? I think they didn't fund that, 2 to 3 years. So basically there was zero put in the capital for last year for several years. But we need $3.8 million this year out of our state appropriations if we're not going to finance any of it. And if you keep doing that, you're going to be in a hole. When we do the master lease program, we're only going to do a 4 to 5 year financing. It's going to cycle. If you're financing your entire fleet, let's say over the next 5 years, by the time you get to year 5, you're done paying year 1's payments. And if you're on a 10-year replacement cycle, you'll go 5 years with no payments at all. So to me, it's not a big financing hole that we're getting into, and it makes sense because we're not talking about taking out bonds. We're not talking about spending, we'll probably finance probably about $5 or $6 million over the next 5 or 6 years, or 4 or 5 years is what I'm estimating.
You said over the next 4 to 5 years, 5 to 6 million?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Finance through the state lease.
Oh, that would be that's a random wild guess, because when you look at our projects, they're not going to finance demo and buildings. They're not going to finance filling in a pool. They're not going to finance rekeying and access control updates. They're not going to, you know what I'm saying? They're not going to
basically only finance things you can repossess.
A parking lot resurfacing.
Makes sense.
So we've got a tremendous demand on our cash coming over the next 5 years I think it's prudent.
All right. So does anybody have any other questions or comments on this? Make a motion to approve the recommended request for financing the $810,000 through the state master lease program. No questions, comments? So for anybody? All right, so can someone make a motion? Okay, can I get a second to give approval for the financing amount not to exceed $810,000 through the state master lease program for the vehicle replacement program?
But you're also not saying this is the only thing you're going to ask for from the vehicle, from the master lease program this year, are you?
We will have round 2 of these vehicles that we'll bring back to you before June 30. And we would recommend that those be financed as well. So you're talking, again, the $1.5 million that was in the, not to exceed the $1.5 million that was in the capital budget is all we would look for this year.
To be through the master lease, funded by the, okay.
For vehicles only?
Yes, sir.
We can't finance the other things, Barry, through this program. They only finance things that they can take back, that they can be repossessed. So you can't finance all the other capital projects.
Can I get a second?
I don't know. I don't like it, but I don't necessarily think that if there's vehicles alone, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But I don't like the road we're going down. I can tell you that right now.
Well, why don't you just say it's for
I don't like at all the road we're going down. That's all I can say. I will second this because it's vehicles only, but you're going to hear a lot more out of me for other things. I can tell you that than what we've heard so far. But I'll second this because it says, and I want it in the minutes that it says because it's vehicles only that we're borrowing this money for.
That's what it says.
Yes, sir. We'll do that.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, did that backwards, but anyway. All right, so motion passes as presented by Chris.
Appreciate it. And our regional centers will be very excited to get these vehicles.
Yeah,
Morale.
I know they need them.
I mean, it's a huge morale boost. At DSM boards, when providers would get new vehicles, it's a pride issue and the consumers are all excited and, you remember that family member.
And the maintenance people are happy because they don't have to go get the breakdown, get another vehicle to them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I only have one recommendation on the transits. I happen to own one of them. Just check the recall record on police. And usually it's down the universal joint area, so just check the recall on those vehicles.
Gotcha.
Yeah, those specific models and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and year.
All right.
Joint. I had to
Candace,
put
you got
that on
that
my
on
car
your-
once.
Okay.
That was not good.
Not good.
All right, okay, so moving on to the next item on the agenda would be the item number 6, directives for approval. The first one listed is 200-01-DD personal funds maintained at the residential level. Chris?
All right, page 23 of your packet. This was put out for 10 days public comment, of which we received only one comment. And after reviewing the comment, I feel that she must have misinterpreted because it's all marked up. It's not like you have a nice clean copy to look at when you're making these comments. Her concern was, so what this is saying is that every single time I need to get cash out for a consumer, I got to have 2 staff there. No, that's not at all what it's saying. What it's saying is if a staff member is going to issue cash to a consumer and the consumer is present and gives it to them, then those 2 notate on the ledger that they agree that he or she got that cash. Absent the consumer, we can't just let staff go get money out of the petty cash and do whatever they want. You know, there's no trail, there's no witness, there's no anything. So the way this is worded, it says, look, if the consumer's not there, you got to go get another staff person before you start taking money out of this account because you need a witness and y'all need to both sign off. We can't remove that requirement. I would never agree to that. Kevin, I'm assuming you wouldn't agree to that either.
No.
And I think she just misunderstood it because she's saying I don't have two staff on all the time.
Right, which a lot of them don't. I would send them a misunderstanding, and yes, so the control is having the second set of eyes on that transaction. That's the control. And if it's not the individual, then it needs to be a staff person.
So that was the only comment. You have already approved this policy as a committee. We went out for 10 days and agreed to bring it back to you through our procedures that you guys have adopted. So this is coming back to you now to go to commission for approval.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Anybody have any questions on this? Or Chris?
I move that we accept it as it is.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the Directive 200-01 DD is approved with, yes, with changes or with the final version that was submitted to us today. So, all right, the next item, 200-09 DD fees for residential services in ICF and IID facilities. Chris?
All right, this directive has also been through the committee and been approved, was put out for 10-day public notice, and we received public comment. We received no feedback, so it stands as originally presented, and we would recommend we take it to full commission at this time.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this?
I don't.
Okay. Can someone make a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Approve it as it is.
Yeah, approve it as it is. Any opposed? Okay. Yep. All in favor say aye, and it's approved as presented. 200-09 DD. All right. The next item. 103-01 DD federal grant application and change policy. Chris?
All right, we are recommending to the committee that this directive be marked obsolete and that the content of it be included in 800-03-CP, which is the DDSN executive limitations policy. My understanding is the policy committee will take that back up at its June meeting, and with the added language that will come out of this directive. This directive simply states that Marriott's approving grant requests we put in, and that you guys have to approve before we accept any money. So every grant has to have the state director's signature. We can't even submit it without that. That's almost a given. And then as far as the funds being received, we're just basically letting you know that, hey, we applied for this grant and we're going to anticipate getting X dollars for it. We already do that as a general practice. And so to have a directive only on this is, in my opinion, silly. And so that's why I'm recommending it be marked obsolete and be built into the other policy, which talks about everything the commission has to approve.
Right, so, and that you're informed of the money coming into the agency.
All right.
I don't have any problem with that as a policy committee, but let me say for the record, we'll be meeting, and the policy committee will not be meeting in February. It'll be meeting in March, and we'll approve it. We'll get it straight then. We've chosen not to meet in February because we don't have enough on the agenda to meet for.
All right. Do we need to do anything today before?
That doesn't need to be done before March, does it, Chris?
Do we need to vote on
No,
it?
sir.
Okay. So we're voting now to send this back to the policy committee, correct?
I believe that's the protocol.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
I make a motion that we send this back to the policy committee for recommendation on the, to combine this policy with the, executive limitation policy.
Second.
Anyone opposed? I did this backwards. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, so the directive passes, to be made obsolete, but it will be going to the policy committee to finalize that, so, all right. All right, next item, directives, coming to committee in March with staff recommendations. Chris, let you address those two, under item 7.
Sure. So we're in the process of reviewing internally 250-10, which is the directive that goes over all of our bans and our outlier process and so forth. And with our changes we made in January, we need to bring this directive in line with our current funding structure. There may be also other content edits. I haven't had time to look at it yet. Debbie Wilson's done an initial review, sent me her comments, but I haven't had time to look at it due to other priorities. But we will have that edited and ready for you all well in advance of the March meeting. Probably have it ready next week or the week after, because this is an important one.
Okay, right. And then item,
If you don't mind, I have a question. Robin,
yeah.
this is Commissioner Robinson. I know that one of our objectives for the year was to begin the process of moving the rest of the agency toward fee for service. Is that what this is going to be, Chris? Is the first steps in that process?
No, ma'am. It's, in this directive, it talks about how to receive funding for at-home outliers. Well, that went away January 1.
Okay.
It also speaks to bands B and I, which no longer exist.
Correct. All right.
So there will be a variety of amendments needed just to bring it in line and catch it up with where we are.
Okay. Okay.
As far as any future change,
in plenty of time to get that done before the deadline of next January or next December 31st, I believe is what it was. So I just wanted to follow up with that, make sure that was part of what was being done.
I don't know if we have a stated timeline on flipping residential.
For residential?
Take that that question one more time. Stephanie, I think the first part of it broke up, so.
Residential is much more complicated than the band Bs and Is are.
Yeah, that's what I think we had it set to where we were supposed to start in that process and be headed that way before December 31st of next year. Didn't it say that in that list of 8 objectives?
That's part of Mary's objectives, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've got to figure out what it's going to take to get there, Stephanie. It might be in the objectives, but working towards something and actually getting there might be two different things at this moment. Okay. Especially since we only get one rate for us to get paid for. Okay. We're going to have to get HHS on board with this idea too.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So we're good with both those. Have we done the regional facility? We haven't talked about that yet. Okay. We're about to, right? Yeah. Okay.
33402 is already ready. In fact, I'm meeting with Susan. I think it's Wednesday or Thursday. I think it's Wednesday to go over that directive. We had Rufus and his team look at it. We've had, again, Debbie DeTroy has looked at it. I think David Wilson even looked at it. We've had a bunch of folks look at it. But in essence, it outlines how if we've got a outside group or an employee that wants to use some of the facilities or have a picnic out there or a family reunion or whatever, it outlines the whole process of how do you apply for that, what rules exist on insurance and liability, what fees get charged. You can't have firearms, you can't have loose pets, can't build loose fires.
Pets. I've heard of loose change, but not
loose pets.
It's got all these rules built into it. We looked at the state parks rules is where I went to kind of look at what the rules were for renting a shelter.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good place to start. Yeah. So I went out there and made sure we had everything covered. So this one's been in existence. I think it needed a lot of work. But we will have that. We can probably send that to the committee members, sometimes toward the end of this month, because Mary and Pat, I don't think have seen this one yet.
I saw it in its original version. I haven't seen it marked up.
So once I meet with Susan, her team, and get edits made, it then goes to Pat and Mary for their review. And assuming they're cool with it, we can probably start sharing that with you all if you'd like to see it that early. But it's basically done.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you for the update. Next item on the agenda, item 8, contracts over 200,000.
All right, page 37 of your packet. Because we have the retroactive residential rate adjustments related to the day program, pass-through rate increase of $3.79 per unit, plus the ICF band rate to pass through those, our largest agencies. If you look at these names, they're all the big boards. When you aggregate all that back to July 1st, and look at the total amendment that they're going to have for the year, they went over $200,000. So these are the boards that we need to bring through you all. I actually have the rate table, which I don't know if any of y'all have seen yet, but it basically, to fully fund a residential bed for 520 day units with the increase is about $1,870, but that's not how we do it. We look at historical participation by each person in each band and develop a band increase based on the historical participation in that by those folks in that band. And so the rate increases were anywhere from $1,006 for a band up to $1,644 increase for a band. So all of them were under 1872, which is kind of a checkpoint. Make sure I didn't mess up the math anywhere. And so all that has been vetted. We've had internal review of those rates. Pat's looked at it as well. And so those are the amendments that we are in the process of issuing. I need your approval to do so.
All right.
I so move that we approve the contracts over 200,000.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Contracts over 200,000 that were presented today are approved. All right. Next item on the agenda, audit directives discussion.
Right, that was 200 and something pages you said, Christine, that I sent. What I did is I went through and found a bunch of articles as well as the GAO's review, which is the bulk of that 270 pages. I don't expect you to sit and read all that. And in fact, I plan on going through, before we present the audit directive revisions, this is on mandatory auditor rotation, which I know is going to be a hot topic for our actual presentation when we get around to it. I will actually have a summary for you all so that I'll reference the article and the page number that I got the information from, both pros and cons to our suggestion and what independent parties have found as they've studied this. Kevin and I and I think Debbie, you're in it too. We're meeting this week on the audit directive, right? Kevin, isn't it Thursday or something, or I think it's Thursday morning. So we're going to be going over our other audit directive changes we want to discuss, but we also are going to have a conversation and get Kevin's opinion on mandatory auditor rotation, because I think he and I both have our own independent, strong opinions as to, where we would land on that being in our directive. So that's going to be the biggest issue. I just wanted to let you know that we're still working on it. We will probably have that for you in March or April, but we will be meeting internally to review basically our existing audit quality and our agreed upon procedures audit quality, and ensuring that we address those areas of concern in any revised directive that we recommend to you. Because we have a good many things that we need to beef up or clarify. Kevin, you got anything to add to the audit directive since we kind of jointly own that?
No, simply I think we need to start with this meeting Thursday morning, which I said, we were emailing about it earlier today, and I've got some staff out, and I was like, well, we can move forward, because I don't think we're gonna be able to meet one time and get all this knocked out. So, we got a lot that we need to discuss.
Yeah.
Stuff we wanna move in, I think Chris has mentioned in the past about this time, we made the changes last year. We sort of had to phase in. There was a list of things and we didn't want to hit them all at one time, phasing in. I think we've seen some things that this year that we still need to tighten up a little bit. So, yeah, I think you and I, we just need to be discussing it internally to be ready to present it to the committee.
So Chris, in the history of
Is this part of cost reports? Causing cost reports to be in a timely manner? Is this going to address that too?
It is, and thank you for asking that. One of the issues that DDSN has always had is all we do, and this is since I've been in the industry, a memo is issued, I think by Debbie possibly, saying, you know, don't forget to get your cost reports in by September 30 and make sure you use our Excel templates. Good luck. I mean, that's kind of the extent of the memo. There's no instructions, there's no support, there's no guides, there's no training, and it's totally absent out of our audit directive. So that's a big thing that we need to add this year. We need cost reports inside the audit directive. And we might recommend fiscal penalties associated with that as well. To be honest with you, I don't need the audit as much as I need the cost reports, because the cost reports are what we use to do our cost report. The audits are the foundation to create the cost reports for each provider. But getting the printed audit in here is of limited use to me. It's really the cost report I need, because we have to have our cost report filed by November 30th every year. So if they're not turning the cost report in until September 30, we got 2 months to do our entire QA and aggregation. And according to Chris Legord, our consultant, that's a push with all the steps we have to do. So, if you had a question,
yeah,
also,
We're gonna have to do. Y'all have to do something to make them have more incentive to bring those cost reports in on time. I mean, it just makes perfect sense that if you don't have a major fine or something there that's going to cause them to say, well, I'll just pay the fine instead of getting the cost report done, you're never going to get them done. And with the more money that the providers have in reserve, the more likely they're just going to pay that fine and move on, unless it's a heavy one. So you're going to have to address things that somebody's not going to like. Oh boy, that's awful, I know, but it has to happen in order to get something done. And we all know how important those cost reports are and how they've been so vital for so long and all that sort of thing, and how awful it was that the guy before you, Chris, dropped the ball on that, which is a whole other story in and of itself. But that's not the point. The point is we have to fix it now so that it don't keep happening.
And they need to be done correctly, I believe, is what we need. Good.
Yeah.
Correct.
They need to be done correctly and on time.
I was just going to ask you, Chris, if in the history of DDSN, has there never been a directive to rotate auditors?
not that I'm aware of, Kevin. I mean, I've only been in the industry since '90. I can't speak to prior to that.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm aware of is where audit, while it's never mandatory, internal audit has recommended that people get bids, not necessarily rotation, but get bids just because it's a public dollar to make sure you're getting bang for your buck, because it's an exempt service under the state procurement code.
Okay.
So is that statewide government agencies, any government agency,
In terms of the.
getting bids?
Well-
Not for financial not for attestation services, not for an audit. That's part of that's an exempt service under the state procurement code. I do think there's something if it's like, financial consultant kind of stuff that a state agency wants to do, you need to send that to the state auditor's office to get their sign off on it.
Okay, but in other words, though, is nothing wrong with an agency going out to bid every so often?
No, sir. And that's what I'm saying, like our providers, they don't have to bid that. We encourage them to make sure that they're getting the best bang for their public dollar.
Right. They get bids on other things though. Are they
Right.
required
There
other
are certain
purchases and
are
things like that?
required. There
Yeah.
are certain things they have to get bids on.
Right. But this is not something that we've ever had to probably get bids on, but you encouraged it.
Right, and some of them do. But some of them, I think Chris has referenced in the past, some of them had probably the same firm.
30 years, I know.
Some of the agencies never got a bid from anybody.
Right,
I can attest to that.
right. And I'm not closed off to any conversation, no, I'm just
But anyway, that's really another subject, truly. From what I was, go ahead.
forgiving me.
I won't prolong it, but but after this is over, I wanted to ask you a few more questions.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So any other questions on the procurement audit?
Audit directive.
Audit directive.
Item 9.
Item 9. Okay.
That was just informational.
Yeah, informational. So item number 10, procurement audit corrective action plan.
Kevin.
Yeah, and that's
And it
Kevin.
does have my name by it. I will say the corrective action plan is management's plan, their response, so they own it. And I think really we just wanted to bring it back up again, it got to the commission before it got to this committee. To,
Right.
again, answer any questions that y'all may have, clarify anything. I do know, Robin, you had requested some information, I didn't hear back from you about it.
Yes, I did get it.
You got the.
Yes, and I haven't shared it with anyone yet. Thinking maybe you might could give a top line on what you sent to me. I think what I asked for.
You asked for the P card holders,
Yeah, a list of the P card, yeah.
right? That was one of them. And at the time, when we initially started that audit, there were 132 employees that had P cards. During the audit process, I think it came up that some of this, some people have them, may not need them. So I knew Candace was actively working on that, so I think I sent you the updated list where, and if I'm misspeaking, because again, this is management, so please jump in, Candace. You'd already dropped that down to, I think, 123, and you're still actively working on, does this person need it, justify to me why they need it, that kind of.
Right, which is good thing to do. Do y'all do that like annually, or is this like something that's not really been looked at for
I think
years,
it-
or?
Yeah, I don't, in terms of procurement, I don't know, some of the.
It hasn't been managed.
Okay.
Moving forward, since this, audit, I do recommend that we, do an inactive list, remove all users that are not actually using their cards. If they haven't used it in a significant amount of time, I would say a year, 2 years, they should not have a card.
Can you hear her, Barry?
Yeah, I can, and I love the idea about it, but I think it should be 1 year that if they haven't used it in 1 year, they don't need a card. But yeah, I heard her. She's doing good with speaking out, so we're doing good.
And analyzing that, also it goes back to the organization charts as far as who has cards and do they have the ability to purchase what they need, in a time, in a timely manner, what that process looked like as far as operation standpoint. So that is also, something I'm looking at to move forward regarding card users.
Okay,
Are we looking at our policy too?
Correct.
Okay.
And we're gonna revise in that as
Great.
well.
And do we have emergency procedures in there? Because if I'm a maintenance guy on the weekend and I need a part, I shouldn't have to worry about a form until I come back. So-
Correct.
Okay, want to make sure.
All of that's gonna be addressed.
All right.
And we have seen that like at providers, emergency purchases.
Yeah, 'cause you
You're not
have
gonna get the form signed because it's a Saturday at 11 PM and he's trying to get a part to get the
Yeah.
HVAC system running and it's August. But then you do the form after the fact.
Right.
I do know some centers have looked at it in the past because they have called me saying I'm looking at reducing P cards. And then maybe we're going from, there was a P card holder in every residence to, hey, we're gonna identify a couple people whose part of their job responsibilities are to be buyers and they'll do it. And so instead of having one in every residence, I'm gonna have 2 people that have P cards. So I know that has taken place in the past at various centers.
Okay.
Why haven't we looked at this before this sort of is a system-wide issue? Because I mean, every card that's out there is a vulnerability, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and we have looked at P card issues at the centers when we go out to do like a regional center. We have looked at that, and that's resulted in some of them. So over the years, we have looked at every center, their P card process. This, we were looking at the whole procurement process, not just P cards. So we
Right.
pulled this in as one facet and just looked at it globally instead of just one center.
So I mean, we looked at the centers, but we didn't look at central office essentially.
Correct, we have not.
So this was the first time in some time or
In some
ever,
time,
right?
And sometimes it sounds like ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
might be ever. And
This,
Chris,
this letter that I have here says it hadn't been, the plan hadn't been updated since March of 2012. Does that sound, I mean, I just wonder if anybody's brought this up since March of 2012.
Well, I think what we were
Has
saying.
any
was that's
commission
why-
brought it up that we need to do? I mean, has it been brought to any commissions of, before ours? Has it been brought to any commission's, attention or anything since then? I mean, it just amazes me that we haven't done any of this since March, according to this March of 2012, and now we're saying maybe never. So, I mean, that'd be a lot longer than 2012.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner, that was when we were saying that because we have a procurement directive that staff has to follow, and I think we were saying that was the last time that directive had been issued. And there had been some substantial changes to state procurement.
Yeah.
And so that directive needed to be updated.
yeah, and I'm not so much worried about I'm not expecting an individual card question to be brought to the commission. It bothers me that there was no process in place to check that kind of thing. Just because, again, in my business, this is a vulnerability. The more people that have their hands on cards, the bigger the risk is for it to be abused. And it needs to be one of those things that's looked at internally. And again, it just seems to me that should be a standard internal control. And I worry when I hear that it didn't exist, what other internal controls we're going to find out haven't been looked at in 10, 12 years, however long it can be.
There's no telling. There's just
We brought,
no telling.
We brought Candace Golson's the lady that you've been hearing talking. She's
Yeah.
the firecracker I referenced last board meeting. Candace is really, got a great critical eye. She comes from DOT and she has instantaneously spotted systemic problems in procurement and begun addressing them, albeit at a slow pace. When COVID hit, all of her attention went to getting masks and sanitizer and shields and all gowns, all that stuff. So unfortunately, it kind of sidelined her advancement that she was making. But I think everyone needs to understand that Candace is the right person for this job, and she's going to get it done. And she has plenty of other weaknesses she can point out right now, in addition to what's in this audit report.
Yeah, I want to make that clear, Chris. I am absolutely not in any way indicting Candace for this. In fact, I appreciate the fact that she was, as I understand it, she was the one who requested the audit, or and I'm glad she's seen these other vulnerabilities. It's just sort of a general commentary of, we found this vulnerability to be very glaring. We found it looks like before anything negative happened, before any criminal activity happened. That's great. I mean, I never mind hearing we found a vulnerability and we've closed it. It just, when the vulnerability is this basic, it makes me very nervous that there are other vulnerabilities that have not been looked at in years. So I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form to be an indictment towards Candace or any negative comment on her. What I'm saying here, it's just sort of a general expression of my gut feels bad.
Yeah, I just wanted folks to know that we did have new leadership in that area, and can only fix so much as soon as you get in there. And so I think you'll see tremendous advancement here. And to your point, Commissioner Lamel, yes, we have tons of additional other vulnerabilities, and we're getting Kevin and his crew to help us with those. Of course, he's got capacity issues as well, but he is making his way across those things that we are identifying that need his attention. Because I just need an independent set of eyes to go in and critically review some things that have caught my attention. So yeah, I can assure you there's other things out there.
So
I
I know,
find them on a regular basis, to be perfectly frank. Unfortunately, we still do.
one additional comment on this particular procurement card evaluation, that I think, Kevin, you'd mentioned to me that there's a pretty low minimum of what they can spend on these P cards. Is that per?
That's one of the controls.
Yeah, per facility versus?
It's per card holder, and that's based on the, like the job dude, the supervisor has to sign off and say, yeah, I think John needs X amount of dollars on his P card, in order to do his job. So you may have, say, a maintenance guy whose threshold is higher.
Right, okay.
For a whole campus than, say, a buyer in one residence would have a lower.
Okay. And so
My question, this is Commissioner Rawlinson. On page 4 of the packet that on the report, it's under the title DDSN State Visa Card Purchasing Program. It says needs improvement, and then I'm trying to understand the chart under there. All right, and so it gives all the different centers that we own, and then it says insufficient documentation or incomplete forms. 29 of 29 or 23 or 26. Does that mean we got 29 of 29 right or 29 of 29 wrong?
Wrong. Yep.
Right, and that's one thing that I wanted to mention.
That bothers me. I mean, as a commissioner, I've watched what happens with the school board here in town, and we have several school board members who are in jail because of that. I would like for us to consider putting in place a policy of some kind. I know I'm not on this committee, but I am on the policy committee, that says that if they don't get their sufficient information in monthly and it's correctly done, that we turn the card off, because this can't go on like this. I mean, this is not good. I mean, they need to, I understand little errors are made or whatever every once in a while, but you don't miss it 29 of 29 times. I mean, right. They need to get their stuff together.
And a lot of times, I will say, I reference this, and I do think, to Commissioner Lamel's comment, I do think probably some of the audits we have done at the centers with P-card has helped. So on this one, when we're saying they're missing documentation, there's a form that they have to fill out to use the P-card.
Yep.
What we're talking about, that was not filled out completely. It was missing a supervisor signature or a receipt signature. In years past, when we have done this at the centers, we would have issues with not having receipts to back up the purchase. I did want to say, we only had one of the P-card transactions. We only had one that didn't have documents, didn't have a receipt. The rest of it was not completing the form. But the form is the internal controls that the person fills out, the supervisor signs off, somebody signs off that they receive it, that it was received. So I did want to mention that.
I know I know that the other thing I had asked you to send me was or to look into was the, what kind of, what amount of money are we looking at here when we see these errors and the purchasing, mistakes? I mean, what does this represent? Like $2,000 or $400,000, So that was the other thing.
So we looked at a total of 139 P-card transactions. The total for that 139 transactions was $46,315.07.
And only one was not.
What percentage of that represent the total P cards?
Right, the 139, because I think I might have been asked you, did we do all the P cards that people have issued, or just a small sampling?
We did a sampling because we'd still be auditing if we were trying to audit every P card transaction.
But based on the 130.
What percentage of P cards was it?
Out of all of them, what was percentage?
Out of all the I wouldn't have, I mean.
Like how many people have P cards?
Yes, that's the question.
And that's what you sent me, wasn't it?
Yeah, 120, as we speak today, 123.
Well, no, because this says 139. I thought we were throwing around 139. This evaluation was on 139 cards, correct?
139 transactions.
Okay, transactions.
Right.
Okay, so then the question be, based on, how would you compare that to the total transaction? What percentage would that be roughly?
It would be in the I wouldn't have any idea total transactions, but it would have to be very small.
2%.
That, I'm wondering if it would even be 2%. And I
And
doubt.
40, what's that?
46,000.
46.
Typically, if you follow audit sampling that auditors follow, this sample was actually very large compared to if you're looking at
Especially from our
trying to project your error rate onto the population, 60 is the max that you need based on statistical sampling to get a representative sample. If you run a true random sample,
right,
which y'all did, right? You would have downloaded all the transactions.
Yep.
And just haphazardly randomly selected 139. This is more than double what an auditor would normally pull if I was a CPA coming in and y'all hired me to audit this. And I think the point we need to make is you only had one missing receipt. This is a internal process that we need to figure out. A, is it effective and needed? Secondarily, it needs to emulate a purchase order process, because the last thing you want people doing, you've got a purchase order process and you've got certain authorizations and approvals in place so that you ensure that purchases are proper. If I bypass that by using a credit card and I don't have any of those checks and balances, then I am bypassing all sound internal controls in regards to procurement. And that's where I need to dissect this and figure out, and I don't know, you may have an opinion on this because I haven't even looked at it yet, is how much does this form need to be versus what it is? And are we creating a situation where there's just a bunch of bureaucracy and it's not really accomplishing a whole lot of anything? And I can't answer that question. Kevin, you might be able to, but I haven't looked at this form.
Yep.
I don't even know what we require.
So I think the P card form was developed to sort of emulate what you're saying, the PO process, but to make it a quick and easy. So the P card was really developed. So, at one point years ago, I heard the state, it cost us $25 to process a PO transaction by the time we do our work, and then we send it over to the Comptroller General's office and they do their work and you get a check. So it really, really, truly was designed for small dollar transactions that you could just do it, run a credit card, fill out the form, get your receipt, somebody reconciles that independently at the end of the month, which they do the reconciliation and supply, and then we pay the bill. So that's really what it was set up for.
So Kevin, is that a red flag issue in your mind? And if so, what would be the corrective action?
In terms of the not filling the form out?
I'm dealing with those numbers that you just referenced.
The $46,000 over 139 transactions,
We either need to follow our policy
Right, I was gonna say the policy.
Because
I need to
it's
change the
needed.
policy.
Right,
And we got a big problem because we're not following our policy. Our policy needs to be revised because it's ridiculous.
So was that written in the action?
And I don't know the answer to that question.
Were those things written in the action plan, what you're just saying? I mean, I don't know that I read that those are the things.
We're
Yeah, we're
monitoring.
reviewing the policy. Now, the form, it's new for me from the agency standpoint. Where I came from, DOT is not required for P cards. Now, I feel like the program was mismanaged, meaning there's the lack of training, which I think you have people that's onboarding and they were getting cards. So you have the regional centers leaving, doing each training at each facility, at each regional center, which I think it needs to be centralized. That way everybody's doing the same thing. Also, I think it's the training, problem with the forms being, not completed when the visas are reconciled at the end of the month. Whoever's reconciling the visas should make sure that information is complete in its entirety before processing it.
Right.
The information in Bank of America, which is the work system. So I think it's also just training and conversation piece. My biggest practice is having that conversation, bringing discrepancies to everyone's attention, and it can be more contagious than anything when you correct situations like we have. And I think that from my standpoint, those who want to change, I've had conversations with different people and I can see the results of the change in the process and they're thinking about things that they're doing in best practices. So I think it's almost just, doing refreshers, quarterly refreshers for a P card training for it, requiring it, before they get a P card, they have to have training. So I think moving forward, those are the measures that I'm willing to take and need to take to turn everything around that you see in this, the issues that we.
After all of that, what you just stated, do you see any, change in, submittals?
Yes, I think people are more aware of what they're doing, especially here at central office.
Okay, other than aware, give me, why you think that the training will cause those folks out there that not submitting their P card to submit.
Well, now that it's in the audit, I have no other choice but to make sure that if I do see lack of participation or turning around, I have to address it. And it should be some type of reprimand or discard of, you lose your authority to be a P card holder. I mean.
So basically what you're saying is even after you go through the processes that you just mentioned, there have to be something else there to enforce what have not been enforced.
Right, I even mentioned an assessment after the training, where they have to at least make 70% before getting issued their card. So that's the process I'm used to from DOT. Before you issue a card, you take training. You have to prove your authority or knowledge that you understand what your responsibility is as a card holder. And once we've acknowledged that you've had that training, if you don't practice those things, there are repercussions.
You're held liable.
We also need to look at the actual form. I mean, it is not self-explanatory. So if you didn't have someone train you how to fill it out, you'd say, I don't know what that is, I'd leave that piece blank. Then I would have to look at all the supporting documentation to see what was left blank. But ultimately, I would ask the question, out of those $40-something thousand worth of transactions, Kevin, we have one missing receipt? And then do we have any transactions that you would think were fraudulent?
no, that's what I wanted to say. So we didn't see anywhere like when LAC has done this, there were, and it's the stuff you've seen in the news with federal employees where they were buying color TVs. So we didn't see that. Also, what I started to say to address Commissioner Lamel's comment, in years past, when we've done the P cards at the centers, we've seen split purchases, meaning my limit is $800. So at 10/22, I make a purchase for $798, and at 10/23, I make a purchase for $694. It was one transaction, but I split it so I could keep it under my P card limits.
Right.
which you shouldn't have used a P card, you should have gone through a PO process for that. So we didn't see that, and I do think that's because, of the audits in the past when they've gotten written up for that. I do like the assessment in terms of you're gonna get training and you have to have a competency-based test before we're gonna put it in your hand. Then I think the thing is follow up with, okay, Kevin, you didn't turn in your receipts. Next month, okay, Kevin, you still didn't turn in your receipts. Well, the third time, it doesn't go to Kevin anymore. It goes to Kevin's supervisor with the documentation to that supervisor saying, I've had problems with Kevin 2 other times. Either have him start following the rules or we're gonna take away his, or you're gonna start doing all his shopping because he's not gonna have a P card.
So would those types of rules become part of the purchasing card program guide that's mentioned on page 5 that you guys are working on?
Yes.
Okay. And then you say in the interim, will we issue an addendum to ensure compliance with the state procurement purchasing policy? Explain that just briefly, what you mean by that.
So in my process, I will, for one, I think we have a lot of spend control limits where you have single transactions and the maximum monthly transactions. So I want to revise that and put some type of control where it's based on either position or local, basically position. Because we have, I think it was 10 pages. So we have it's a lot of different profiles, and I don't know which is which. Who's assigned, because there could be number of card holders on various things. So just revising things that need to be changed and that are very critical right now so they can start practicing those until we revise a whole manual. And that was just a timeline so I can address everything and analyze all of the things that need to be addressed. So it could be even sooner than
Right,
what we recommend.
Yes, so the procurement manual, I think you referred to it, Kevin, from March 2012 or something. Is that what you were referring to? That thing is a paperweight right now. Virtually useless. It's so antiquated. When I tried to read it, I don't quite understand it. It's outdated with job titles and everything else. So I think our goal is ultimately we need to get that whole manual revised, but we can't wait till that whole manual's done to fix little things that we knew we need to do right now as a result of this audit and other things that are important. So that's where the addendum comes in is, theoretically we would get that whole manual to you all and get it approved. But time is a ticking and things can be going wrong the whole time. So we just need to nip it.
Correct. And
with an addendum.
even with the procurement manual, the state procurement changed the thresholds May of 2019 before I got here. Where the small dollar thresholds changed. It used to be $0 to $2,500, where prices are fair, reasonable. Now it's $0 to $10,000. So that has not been changed in the procurement manual. So we have to, those thresholds we have to address. Because each threshold requires them to be handled differently. So.
Did I understand you say you came from SCDOT?
Yes, sir.
And I'm confident that you know what you're doing. I have extensive background in working with SCDOT.
Thank you, sir.
So you should be able to handle that with ease.
Thank you.
Let me just say that we need to, can we say that the committee should be updated whenever we get the addendum done so that we can get these small things corrected as opposed to the entire plan, because this plan says it's going to be a year before it's done. And obviously we need to get stuff done before that. So can we just put down in the next few months, a couple months or whatever, that we get updated that the addendum was finished?
Yeah, I'm good with that. If
We have a target date, so we'll get
Which are May, and so we'll get it done before
okay.
January.
All right, before we move on, Kevin, were there any other comments on this that you want to bring our attention to, or any other,
I will say, the
thoughts?
only other thing that I have that jumps out is, I will tell you, I do think probably it's a training issue, because the ones that were right, it's the same person doing it right. So, like, there may be 3 transactions that we sampled, and all of Kevin's 3 transactions were correct and completed in full. So, somebody was trained.
right?
Right.
So, training. All right. So no other questions or comments on this before we move on to the next topic? All right, so we're on item 11, provider fees for service loan program.
Okay.
Chris.
All right, last page in your packet, page 51, we've been talking about we need to get this done. And so I've thrown together some guidelines that I would like to get the committee's feedback on. And then, of course, if you feel this needs to go to the full commission, I'll let y'all make that decision. I'm not sure whether it does or not. But just trying to outline what our criteria are going to be so that we can begin lending money to our providers. So everyone has had this. I don't know if you want me to go over it item by item or how you want to approach this. But
on page 51.
Yes, ma'am.
The checklist thing.
Basically in a nutshell, you can't just borrow whatever you want, and you got to prove you can pay it back to us. And we're gonna have a written document that outlines the agreement. I mean, if you look into all these words, that's basically what it boils down to. You want our money, you got to prove you need our money. Secondly, if we give you money, it better be time limited, and it's not like constant cash flow shortage, and you have the ability to repay us in a reasonable period of time. That's what all that's about.
Gotcha. Well, this is the first time I think we've seen this, right?
It came out with the packet, didn't it? I mean,
Right. I mean,
yes.
a day or Friday, right?
Right.
Okay, and I know we've been waiting on, what that process is. So,
Maybe we do go through it piece by piece.
yeah. Let's do that, Chris. Just,
Okay.
I mean, I know everybody can read. But maybe just go, because I'm imagining this is a process, step 1, step 2, right? Step 3, okay. So that's an overview. The first item is an overview of the, why we're doing this and what it's related to. It must be a board.
Yeah, so this isn't for private providers. It's got to be a DSM board because this is about addressing the fee-for-service flip.
Right.
So that's why I've worded that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have a board that is not a financial manager of at-home bins, Rich Lex.
That's right. There's only an exception to one of our rules. It's kind of the way it is.
Okay. So they anticipate short-term cash flow shortage caused by the fee-for-service conversion. Providers needing assistance will provide the following evidence of needing it. So provide a cash flow projection through the end of fiscal year 2021. Provide details of existing lines of credit. Provide balance sheet and income sheet. And those are 3 things that they have to provide in order to prove that they need the assistance, correct? Those are the only things, okay.
The only question I have is on the sheet is the repayment terms. I assume that would be within a year since next year it could change, right?
Are you saying that they would have to pay it back within fiscal year 2022?
I'm saying we'd have to know when they were going to pay it back so that it wouldn't just change every year and just add more to it. So what was your plan about that?
I think like I worded in here, we can land on specific terms if you want to say, no, everybody's got to pay it back in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. My thought was some boards are better off than others. Either they have existing cash that's not too far behind, or they have a tiny gap that they have to fix, whereas others may have a cash deficit and a big gap that they got to fix. So to me, we really need to land on specific, unique terms based on each provider, in my opinion. And we can run those through the committee before we actually approve anything and justify why we're recommending the different terms. But I just don't think it's, I don't think it's one. Yeah, I don't think it's one size fits all, honestly.
Yeah.
I just think we need to approve it through the committee is the only thing I'm saying.
That's fine with me. And if we've got somebody that should be able to repay it within the next year, why give them 48 months to do it? So
And then
it
number
works
8
both
says,
ways.
but doesn't number 8 take care of number 7? It's like you have a promissory note, and on a
Right.
promissory note, the date's gonna be on there as to when it needs to be paid
Yeah.
back, no?
So we'll bring the promissory notes to the committee.
Chris, will we have to come to the full commission or just the finance committee?
It's up to you all. I don't know. This is more of an operational
Yeah.
issue to me. I think we're bringing it to the committee for constructive criticism and feedback, but if you feel like it needs,
I think-
DDSN has lent money to providers in the past, and I don't think you guys ever knew about it, and probably still don't. So,
But there was also no process for that.
correct.
But what you're gonna approve is a process for that being done.
Good, okay, perfect.
I'm not 100% sure that you need to, and you all weigh in on this, approve each one as long as we follow the process.
But we're certainly willing to do that if you feel that's necessary.
And how many providers you think will probably take advantage of this?
Debbie, putting you on the spot, 10 or 15?
Thank you. I felt like you told me.
I don't think it's gonna be that many. I think it's probably maybe 5 to 7.
I would say I
I
don't.
just think that the finance committee should approve it if it's 5 to 7 or 10 people. I mean, that's not a big, a lot of people. I think the commission might, I don't know that the commission needs to approve it except to say that they're giving the finance committee authority to do it.
Well, I mean, again, from an operational standpoint, I would say that we have a process. The process is being followed. I don't necessarily know we need to approve anything other than the process. I think we need to be made aware of stuff. I think we need to know, yes, this loan was made with these terms, but I don't, again, the purpose is for us to make a process for staff to follow. And as long as they're following the process, I don't think we need to get into the weeds of approving individual ones, right? Because that gives us a pattern for approving them in the future as well. Again, it's different between
once we go to fee for service, we don't have loans anymore,
But Barry, we're talking about a huge thing with residential. I mean, much more complicated than B&I. We might be in a whole other, when we make that switch to residential, I mean, we're setting precedents here, right? This is a chunk that we're converting over to come up with a process that's going to help us make the conversion to at whole. There may be a transition loan period there too, right? Again, we're talking about massive systemic shocks in a good way, but sometimes we need to provide for that. So I mean, that's my thought on this.
Well, I don't have any problem with that. It seems to me like, and I don't have any problem with varying the payment plan and all that sort of thing. It just seems like to me that the process varies so much that you might need to improve each individual one. But if there's only one process and that goes for everybody, and the only difference is how they pay it back, then I don't have any problem with just approving the process then. If there's only one process, but I was under the impression there was more than one process. But if there's only one process and the only difference is how much money you pay back and when, then that's fine.
That would be correct. One process with the 2 variants that you mentioned.
Say what?
You're exactly right. It would be the same exact process with only the 2 variables you mentioned, which is how much and how fast you repay it.
And we could just do it as a report, like we report all the other expenses that come to the commission. Contracts over 200,000 we report.
Right.
And what else do we report? All the others, don't we report like all the
Well, I mean,
contracts?
if we're going to report to the commission, then that's the way we would do it. I thought we were reporting to the finance committee, but if we're reporting to the commission, then that's exactly what you do it, just like you do the contracts over 200,000.
Yeah.
Is what I would guess.
That would seem to make sense.
I mean, I'm just thankful we're doing it this way as opposed to, I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative because I'm just thankful we're doing it this way. This is the right way to do it. So I'm more thankful for that than I am what the process is. It'd just be interesting to know what the process was, but I'm not trying to get into the weeds of every single process and who needs to pay back how much and all that. I mean,
Right.
but then again, it turns out to be not near as many people as we had once anticipated. So I'm thankful to hear that too.
So I think this outline is good. I mean, I think it, like what you've presented today is good. It's not the process though, right? I mean, is it
Right.
the process or is it just partial? I mean,
What do you feel is missing?
well, like, let's see, explain the adjustments. So that would just be what anecdote, they would just tell you what, I mean, and I don't know.
Where's that at?
That's on number 6, just filling out one of the steps, I guess.
So item 6, basically, and I sent you copies of 3 of the studies we've done since I've been here. Basically, we will provide a list of recommendations and they need to come back to us and explain, okay, so you recommended we do this. This is what we plan on doing or have done. And we have to accept that because their ability to repay us is contingent upon them fixing their operations.
Right.
Right.
So that's what's inferred there.
Okay.
If you want it to be more detailed than that, we can certainly detail it out. But in essence,
Well, I just wanted to make
it's
sure
kind of like you're going to
that the committee hears.
you're gonna borrow money from us, and we got to do what we need to do to make sure that we put them in a position to be successful long term and to repay us.
That's right. If they don't change whatever those recommendations are, they're not going to repay the loan.
And what I was going to say was you do need to make a little bit more clarification in number 6, probably for that same reason. But the other big thing I was going to say is that the boards need to be notified directly of what we are of the fact that they are borrowing money and what the process is for that.
We're doing that
Yeah,
now.
once you guys approve whatever you approved, we'll alert them. We've already told them in meetings, you know, if you guys see something urgent on the horizon, please don't wait to let us know. You know, go ahead and let us know now of what you see coming down. And to my knowledge, Debbie, I haven't heard. I mean, I know there's some out there, but nobody has called me or emailed me yet saying we're really worried about our cash right now.
I want to make sure we're talking about the same boards there. Barry, are you referring to the actual board persons for each individual agency or just the boards in general? In other words,
I'm talking about the board. If there's a county board that needs to borrow this money, I think they need to be made aware. We need to make sure they're made aware by their executive director that we borrowed this money and this is what our corrective action plan is to not to continue to have to borrow money, and this is what our payment plan is and that sort of thing. I think that needs to be told to the board. I would have certainly wanted to know as a board member that. I assume they would let them know, but I would like to assume they would let them know, but I wouldn't want to assume anything around here. So I just think that we need to make sure the boards are aware that their particular person, whatever these 10 or 15 people are, have borrowed money and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
right, which I think is a little bit.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think we were talking about we were using board in 2 different ways. So I wanted to clarify that. Because I don't think that the response that we got was using the board the same way. You guys on the same page now?
Board members, yes.
Board
Yes.
members. Well,
Right.
what our practice has been, because this is not our first go around with helping struggling boards over
Right.
that,
Yeah, I know.
over that finish line. Our practice has been, when we do that analysis and we give those recommendations, we send a copy to the board of directors, as well as to the executive director. And we tell them what the terms were, just to get the help that we were given back then.
Yeah.
And we will continue with that with here.
I think with the memorandum of understanding, the promissory note will require the board chair to
Yeah,
sign it.
sign off on it.
That was going to be my question. It seems logical that the MOU has to be signed by the chair. So, yeah.
Because, Ms. Debbie, just because it's maybe 6 or 7 now, doesn't mean that that number cannot go up.
Correct.
That is correct.
Right.
So that's what we have to guard against. So what's the safeguard that we put in there? Say for instance, that number jump up to 15 or 10. Same procedure?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we need to,
Do we have a max that we can loan total? Like, what if people ask for
well, exactly.
20 million and we only have 10
Um,
in the bank? How do we tell them we can't loan them money?
That's what the analysis is for.
Well, we don't put any kind of cap in here, so
I
I
know,
think
but
their point
we should be
is,
looking at
yeah,
that.
we can add
Yeah,
something
the
like
cash
that. That's a
flow where
good
they need
point.
to be.
Not to exceed, certain percentage of their budget or something.
Yeah.
Pass it has an
On each one?
of one payment. That's what we've
On
used.
each, like, board request?
Yeah, they can't ask us for $10 million. We'll turn that down.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Well, good point. So we'll modify this to add the board chair signature, and also put some kind of guardrails around the amount that can be borrowed. And then build out a reporting mechanism so the committee and commissioner are aware of what we're doing.
Right.
Wonderful.
And I don't personally, this is Ed Miller, I don't see anything wrong with the commission voting it. That's just my personal opinion. For the record.
on the requests,
Yeah.
on the
On
individual,
each request.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
such
we
and
only such. have 9 members of our board, remember y'all, so I mean, and 8 right now, so I mean, it's not like we have 25 members. So,
You've got 7 members and you have 6 right
Talking
now.
about the commission?
I mean, sorry, 7 and 6, that's right, I remember the commission. Yeah, we only have seven members we could have and 6 members we do have, so you're not talking about a lot of people, is all I'm saying, so it's probably better that they just approve the whole, like we do the contracts. Just like Ed just said.
Right, y'all are
Like I
on the
said.
same page,
Yeah. So everybody on the same page. That's all.
yeah. So, I believe that I'll maybe someone might want to make a motion to kind of combine what Barry and, Ed, just said, that,
Chris, how would you put that in?
I think I would say that we are going to bring to the Finance and Audit Committee the specific request by each board of the loan amount they've requested. And just share that amount with us and any background necessary on that, and then we would vote on that and then take it to the commission, just like we do the amendments over 200,000, just treat it like that. This is what they've asked. This is what we want to give them. Commission, okay. Any problems, any questions? Okay. Committee, okay. And then we go to the commission at the commission meetings and state what's been, recommended for the commission to loan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I think one thing we need to build in is a fail-safe on, if some urgent situation arises and the timing is not good. So here's what we're gonna have to do. Based on what you just presented, I've got a meeting statewide tomorrow. I want to tell people, look, if you foresee you're gonna need money, you better consider the timing of our commission meetings, because we are not authorized to give you anything until they approve it. So you better get get on top of your cash situation and let us know so that we have ample time to take it through the commission. And as long as you're fine with that, talking about unintended consequences again, if, you know.
It sounds to me like they would want, I mean, we would want them to be ultra prepared, you know.
Yeah.
They wouldn't take this, they wouldn't want to make this a last minute request. They would want to try their best to.
Oh, they have, they've.
To anticipate,
We
you
can't
know.
do payroll tomorrow.
It is,
Timing scares me.
it's very nervous.
Okay, well, speak
We gotta
up.
build a fail-safe in there somewhere,
But-
because we ran into this with the policy committee back in the day, trying to get things we absolutely had to do, like assessments and things like that came over from HHS, and then not be able to get it on the agenda and get it through. So I don't want to plan around a committee, but I'd like to, if you can think of a way to put a fail-safe in there for an emergency situation.
All right.
All right.
Well, shouldn't the emergency situation be that the finance committee would approve it? And then,
Yeah, because we have a meeting essentially every 2 weeks with you
Yeah.
all.
So if we
We
can
either
just
have
get it through
finance
where you
committee
guys
or
can sign it,
commission.
and the commission could ratify it, because we had to get it to them. So,
Right.
or
I don't
vice
disagree with
versa, the commission can do it, and, you know, before you guys get a hold of it. Because we do meet every couple of weeks, so we should be able to get it in.
What were you gonna say, Kevin?
I was just throwing out again, just brainstorming, if the fail-safe was staff determines that they need the funds, then you're granted to give them, and it's proportional for the rest 5 months left, you're granted the ability to fund them for a month until such time as it would come up into the next audit committee or commission meeting. And at that time, if it gets the nix, then you've limited your output to that 1 month's worth of money that you fronted them.
I mean, from a logistics, I mean, if that's, in y'all's opinion, a better solution, or, you know, than what we've come up with, I mean, I kind of defer to you guys since y'all know what it, you know.
Hey, it's a new process. That's always the
Yeah.
problem with a new process. If you put something in stone, you can't be nimble with it to see what happens when you actually start firing up the engine,
Right.
you know?
On the surface,
It sounds like it.
I have no issue with, as long as one or the other bodies approves it and the other ratifies it if necessary, then I think we can be agile enough with that, because
That's
a
too
finance
much.
director should be able to project what cash they're gonna need 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. I mean, that's not asking much.
Should is the operative word.
So theoretically, every 2 to 3 weeks, we have an opportunity. Go ahead, Barry.
I was just gonna say that, you know, if they can't do that, Chris, maybe we need to look at their credentials again. I mean, you know, that's kind of like what a finance director's job is.
Yeah. All right.
So what's the motion?
Motion,
I think.
Or maybe their board needs to look at their finance director's credentials,
the motion is that,
but anyway.
good Lord, right,
So take the existing policies and add.
yeah.
Can you read my handwriting?
Yeah, so the motion, that we, I think, have settled on is that the short-term cash flow loan parameters that was presented today, we want to add, to item number 8, that the, board chair sign the, promissory note, or memorandum of agreement, and that the specific loan requests be made during this Finance and Audit Committee meeting, or in front of the commission meeting, whichever meeting comes first under, circumstances that are emergency, that one of those, either one of those will be sufficient in approving the request that has been made for the loan. I think,
If it was a finance committee to approve it, then it would be ratified by the commissions, what it would amount to.
and
Ratified is the right word, by the commission. If it's approved by the finance committee, it would then be ratified, I think, by the commission. Isn't that the word?
Yes, sir.
yes,
That would be the word, because all we want to do at the end of the day is make sure that the commission has ratified and is aware of it. Even though the bulk of the work will not take place there, they voted it in, we voted it in as a commission, and we are aware of it. It's not like something that we're not aware of.
That's right.
I would so move that.
and I also want to add one more,
Go ahead.
one more thing to that. I don't know, maybe she could make it separate. But we also want to, we also discussed today that there would be a loan maximum placed into the loan parameters. We also agreed on that today, right? Wouldn't that?
Right, and that would look like some computation based on their budget size. So maybe 1 month's operations or something like that, we would land on.
I think you also
At
need to
most.
put in a process for denial and a grievance procedure. It's not in here.
Okay. It's a long motion.
So
So
move.
should I make like 5 different ones? I don't know. What do you think?
If you want to break it into 2 and say one is for the revision of the actual process,
Yeah,
and then the second one be approval,
yeah.
commission's role in the approval of each one of these loans.
I can go with all of that,
Which I still
She
think,
said.
I'm saying, divided by 2. How
Lord, let me just say this, I still think it's setting a precedent that does not necessarily need to be
Well,
set.
I mean,
It's you are serving your pleasure.
if they're gonna have
I'm not
a,
gonna do that. I'm gonna break it out. What,
if they're
fair?
gonna have go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna try to make 2 different motions, or suggest 2 different motions for one of you guys to take on. Do you want to make, Barry, why don't you make the motion? Would you like to make a motion on the commission's role in this process? And then I'm gonna we'll make another motion for some updates to the loan parameters that we discussed. So, Barry, would you like to make a motion on what I
thought
just said
we were gonna do the loan
earlier?
parameters first, but we can do,
All
what
right,
it amounts
whichever
to
one,
is that-
you want to make one on the loan parameters, you can do that, and then maybe,
Yeah,
it's
the loan parameters is that
got a few things in it.
that you need to do the total amount of money, and that the executive director and the chairman needs to sign the document, correct? That was the only two to the loan, that's the only 2 provisions, right? And the
Yeah,
total
also-
amount of money that can be loaned.
Yeah, and Mary suggested,
Well, Mary's is a separate thing because it's a grievance and it's a rejection. So to me, that's a separate motion altogether.
okay, I was gonna
Well, that's
lump,
part of the process.
I was gonna lump it all together since it's part of the process that
Right.
we want,
If it's denied, we always have to have a way for someone to appeal that decision in anything we do.
Okay, well, if it's denied, then the only person that they would appeal to is the finance committee. There's nobody else to appeal to that I don't think that I would agree to unless it was the commission or the finance committee wanted to. So I'm not sure what good that would do. We can put it in there.
who were you thinking that the denial or grievance would go to, Mary?
Us.
Yeah, administratively, denials have not been handled at the commission level. There's an appeals process administratively that usually happens first and sometimes only. So
Because most things don't go to the commission level, the day-to-day. So
Yeah.
if we bring something to you, the loan's gonna be wrapped and packaged, ready to go. I'm not gonna bring you to a loan that we really wanna reject. So if we have to reject something because more than likely it's because information is not given to us. That appeals process allows somebody to bring more information forward. And then maybe a good wrap loan could come to
So
you
that
guys.
standard appeal process.
Oh, well, that's not what I'm thinking about appeal then. I'm thinking
I
about.
don't see
if
you
the-
guys really turning, we wouldn't bring something to you that we thought was a bad loan.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I didn't get what you were saying then. I thought you meant that if the staff decided to reject somebody's loan outright and we weren't going to give them the money because they were asking for too much or whatever, that's fine. If it's just because they haven't filled out everything and they haven't done everything, then of course, that's
Or even if they
an
asked too
employee
much,
thing.
Barry, we'd be telling them why we thought it was too much and giving them a chance to request again.
Or else another thing could be, no, we don't agree with your operational adjustments. We're not gonna do them.
And I wouldn't bring that to you guys and ask you to approve that.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so we need
That
a
makes sense to me.
motion.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, we're just trying to talk through all the nuances of this. And make sure that the parameters are complete, and we've determined that they aren't because we need to add several things to them. So does someone want to make a motion of what we need to add to the loan parameters? Which I think we all know what they are. The
Board chair signature,
board chair signature,
an amount not to exceed based on their budget size, a denial and appeal procedure, and that's all I had for that one. And then you said you wanted to do the committee involvement as a separate
yeah.
topic.
Okay, so who wants to make the motion?
I'll make a motion that occurs, except I think we need to add the executive director to sign it in there.
Right, of course.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, all right, so,
All right, Ed, if you want to second that, I think we'll be done.
I second, motion, go ahead.
all right, anybody opposed? I mean, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we approved making some changes to the parameters for the fee-for-service provider short-term loans. We also need a motion to be made regarding loan requests to be brought in front of the commission for approval. When there are emergency requests, the requests will be brought in front of whichever the Finance and Audit Committee, whichever one comes first. So the Finance and Audit Committee meeting or the commission, the full commission meeting for emergency requests would be brought and ratified depending on which body approves or reviews the request. So that's, I think, what the other motion is. Is that accurate?
That's right. Except Robin, it should say that if the policy committee approves something, I mean, if the finance committee approves something, then it should be ratified by the commission. If the commission approves it, it does not need to be ratified by anybody because it's already been approved. So if it comes for the commission first, it doesn't need to be ratified by anybody. But if it comes for the policy committee first, I mean, the finance committee first, it needs to be ratified by the commission is all that would say.
All right, so someone want to make a motion on that?
So moved.
I just made it, unless you want to, oh, well, sorry, go ahead, Ed, you don't make enough motions. So you want to
Okay, so he made a motion on how you described the motion that how we want to move forward on the commission's involvement. Barry, you want to Barry, you want to second it?
Yeah, I'll second that, sorry, go ahead.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes to.
Those that are making notes, we got what we're doing right now? without any trouble? Because this has kind of been hard today.
The only question I have is, are you gonna have these two motions approved by the full commission also for the loan parameters? Or are you just gonna take it up in committee?
No, we're just gonna have it all done, and then once it's all completed, then we'll approve it. The commission will just approve one document. We don't have to approve the additions.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Okay.
But any motion in committee is just presented to the commission for approval ultimately. So I mean.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next item is the governor's budget, I believe, right? Yeah.
Right, now,
Budget.
I'm going to ask Mary to help a little with this. So the governor's budget, just to clarify, we had a public speaker comment period from Jason Tagger from Lawrence talking about residential. Just want to clarify that somebody misinterpreted the governor's budget that they put out. The only thing they've awarded to us, which is really not awarding us anything, is transferring money from HHS's budget to ours for something HHS already does and is obligated to do. And then the $2.5 million for Greenwood Genetics Center is pass-through funds for them. So none of our budget priorities really were addressed other than the first filled slots. Now with the House, we just went and met, and I'll let Mary.
We just had our presentation to the House, and, we presented our budget, told them why we needed what we needed. Also talked about the additional request from to HHS to raise our single residential rate. We only get, remember, when we start talking about fee for service, we only get one rate. So the only thing we can pass through is that one rate we get, which is not going to support the high difficult people, and it's going to be an overpayment to the lower people. So the rates aren't set where they need to be for the residential rates, for the residential services. And again, that's something HHS has to do. That's why we're stuck there. But ultimately, to say that if we could get HHS to raise that rate a little, it would help us with the interim process of trying to get people where they need to be, acuity based as far as the care they require. But the meeting went well. They asked very few questions. We did talk about the first fund slots, which we did get funded for, but we made a big push for the money that HHS has already raised rates for certain services, and we're on the hook for that as part of our match. For nursing services, for adult day health, transportation, and for, what was the other one? Attending care. So right now, things are not, the utilization is not off the hook, off the chain because of COVID. But once the healthcare emergency goes away, those rates are still there. We're still going to be on the hook for that. So, but basically, we presented the budget as we was approved in commission in this committee.
We had a whopping 10 minutes.
We had 10 minutes, but I went over. I just told them I couldn't stop. I just kept on. And they were very kind. They did not. Yeah, I finished the presentation. They didn't stop.
And is this an annual thing? This budget request meeting or whatever? Okay.
This is 2022. This is 2022. So we're working in like 3 different years right now.
Yeah.
Closing out 20, working on 21. Still haven't really got a budget for this year other than continuing resolution, and then this is 2022.
And that's the other thing. Our hearings were, we pretty much are in a rhythm of when you have hearings. You have the governor's office, then you go to the House, then you go to the Senate. But COVID has just put the kibosh on all that kind of stuff. It's just an odd. And then really, it's just a continuing, continuing revolution. It's not resolution going on. And personally, after hearing horror stories about other states, that's not a bad thing, that we're getting the same money we have gotten. I know we need more to grow and do other things. However, given the state of emergency we're in, the state's doing remarkably well. So.
All right. Anybody have any other questions or comments before we move to the next item? All right. Cost reports update, Chris.
This is a standing agenda item until we get our cost reports caught up. Just want to announce that we do have a new staff starting in finance tomorrow. And we're excited about having her join us. She will be tasked with being our cost report preparation person. She works for Debbie, and you know, we'll have to train her, and she'll have other help. It's not going to be all on her, but she'll be the primary responsible party for the cost reports. And then we're working really hard with Myers and Stauffer. Tons of data exchange still going on with them for 2013 through 15, and we're hitting 2019 and 20. We're trying to work on right now. So did you have any kind of update on cost reports or your new staff?
No, you said it.
Okay,
All right,
that's it.
okay. No one has any questions? We'll move on to the CFO report from Chris.
Real quick, we do have Melissa Galasso is a very well recognized and has received many awards for her presentations on very dry and technical subject matter. And we've hired her again this year to do additional accounting and auditing sessions for us. The first one starts on the 16th. We've invited all of you to participate. If you're interested in going to that, you can sign up on our Finance and Audit Resources page. There's a form that you fill out to let us know what sessions you plan on attending. And that way we can send you the links, because she does her presentations in Zoom. So we're real excited about having her come again. We're actually going to, I think these sessions will be a lot better than last year. Last year was our first attempt at it, and it was just way too much information in a short period of time. We did like, what was it, a 6-hour session? And so now we're doing 4 2-hour sessions. So anyways, we're really excited about that. And then the only other update, we met with HHS this morning, Mary and I did. We're moving forward on the admin contract. We actually have gotten clearance from the interim state director over there to go ahead and bill them for our administrative costs, since we've gone ahead and got out of the split rate situation. So we've done our part. The actual written document's not entirely completed, but we're a hair from being done on that. EVV, electronic visit verification. You know, we're in a penalty phase. I want to thank Thomas Philip Clark. I get his name's hard.
He's got too many first
Thomas
names.
Clark Phillip. He's the interim director. He jumped right on it. They sent us $425,000 to pay the FMAP that we're going to lose due to not being compliant with EVB, which was not our fault. So that's why they've agreed to pay our penalty. So they've gone ahead and sent us that full $425,000. He did forward me information with CMS, the feds, on their strategy to become compliant. And in that, they indicated that we plan on becoming compliant July 1st. That was the first I heard of that date. So we asked about that this morning. We'll get clarification whether that's the target or not. To me, that's very concerning. I don't think we can hit that, even if we started right now, because you're talking about a lot of provider and caregiver and technology type things, and systems interfacing and so forth. So they're supposed to let us know if that's a real target date or one that they threw out there that maybe they've revised. And then the final comment I'll make is they did extend the public health emergency, which means we'll continue to get our 6.2 FMAP through the end of June. So that is going to help us continue to meet all the needs that are going on right now related to COVID is impacting a lot of things, and it's allowed us to kind of weather that storm. So that's my report. If there's no questions, I'll kick it back to you.
All right.
What is that reporting? I mean, what is that compliant computer program call? I mean, the program call that we're trying to get in compliance with by July 1st that we're saying that's not really our fault?
Authenticare is the name of the software.
It's the software that we're going to be reporting everything through, right?
Right, and they're going to purchase the software, pay for all the implementation and everything, right, Mary? There's not any cost to us joining them, and it'll be, the great thing about it, we went over before Josh left and we talked about all of our different options, and we landed on following them because there's just, piggybacking on their implementation for a lot of different valid and good reasons, not the least of which is
We don't have a choice.
all the caregivers,
They get to choose it.
well, they did give us a choice, but we
No,
said.
no,
we
they
don't
don't,
really-
get- well, with the beginning, they gave us a choice and they said, but we're paying for it, so what's the choice?
Right,
But ultimately,
exactly.
the state Medicaid agency is the agency that has to choose the system and how it's implemented. So, and they did.
But the biggest advantage that I saw out of it was, first of all the systems integrate. And then the other issue is if you've got a caregiver out in the home that's, say, CLTC or has some other person that's paying them, without us following Medicaid, they could have potentially had to use 2 different apps or
Right.
3 different apps. So this allows a very consistent system to be used regardless of the funding source that they're using for the service that they're providing. That was the biggest win to me.
Yeah, well, and right now we have the different case management systems being used, so it's causing a little bit of a backdoor they gotta fix. They want the provider to see one way in. Even if behind the scenes, they're gonna have to take data and push it together and, separate or do whatever they have to do. But they don't want to create what they call provider abrasion by saying, oh gosh, if I do DDSM people, I gotta do this. If I do this person, I gotta do this. Because they might drop the DDSM people and we don't want to lose our providers. So that's very important that we keep them. So provider abrasion is not an insignificant issue.
Okay. Kind of reminds me of is there any correlation between that and when we handed over the BabyNet stuff and then the billing for BabyNet providers just like fell apart, nobody could get paid, nothing was organized, no one knew how to.
Well, that had to do with the software system that they inherited with the BabyNet. It's terrible. Nobody liked Bridges. They really do need a whole new system. That is a problem. When you don't have computer systems that talk to one another, it is a real issue.
But you're right, it is comparable, because you have the same provider going in a house, and they're using Bridges because the child's under 3, and then they go next door and provide service to a child who's over 3, and they have to put that in their app. So it is the same kind of, some inconsistencies, and what Chris was talking about, this allows consistency. So no matter what home you're going in, you're using the same system.
All right.
Okay, well, moving on.
Okay, well, if no one else has any more questions for Chris regarding his report, then we'll move to Kevin's Director of Internal Audit report.
I'm going to make mine brief, but maybe y'all have been sitting here for a while. I did send out last week, we had our final report on the Lakeland Center payback for a DOL compliance issue under the Workforce Improvement Opportunity Act. What is it?
Workforce.
Innovation, that's the one I couldn't remember, Innovation Opportunity Act. So total payback was $132,000. We've been monitoring this. They paid the consumers out over 21 months. We've been monitoring it. This was the last one. Everybody has been paid in full and it's over and done with.
Okay, gotcha.
Any questions?
Well, we've looked at all the regional centers to make sure, right? Can you update them on that?
Yeah, so we have looked at, because this was an issue 22 months ago, we went back this past summer and we looked at every regional center to look at their compliance with WIOA. And all the centers did a really good job. We only had one individual at one center that had to get a little bit of payback. What they have to do is provide, Oak Rehab has to come in and provide some training prior to them going to work for sub-minimum wage, and then we have to also provide them with advocacy information. So the centers have implemented a plan and a process where they're monitoring that. So when we did our follow-up in June, did an audit statewide in June, again, we only had one individual at one center.
Okay. All right.
Then I'm just going to close out with a little bit of good news. Again, this just closed out. I mentioned the case management survey that we sent out. So we actually had 35 responses. We had 42 people that invoiced us in December for case management. So we had an 84% response rate. The good news is of those responses, only 15% are considering getting out of the case management business.
And I think you told me like 2 of those 6 were gonna have to get out because of conflict-free.
Several,
Yeah.
only one of them said they're really completely getting out. The other 4 said they're gonna keep what's not in conflict. So they're just gonna do the cases to deconflict. The memo that went out that said you can expand into other counties without going through the whole process, just contact procurement. I'm not sure why, this was a little concerning, but 98% of the respondents said they were aware of that. So one of them was not aware somehow, but 98% of them said they were aware of it. And 39% said that procedural modification will increase the likelihood of them expanding case management services. So that's good news.
That is good news.
We will analyze all that and we'll get y'all a report on that, but I just wanted to mention those couple.
And you call that report the K?
I'm just calling it a case management survey. We'll probably get a fancier name.
Okay.
We issue a report like an analysis of case management services for the state of South Carolina.
Okay.
I haven't really thought about it.
Okay,
It
well,
won't just say
I'm
case
just
management
trying to
survey.
make a note of it so I know what to ask when it's.
We were just trying to see if they could look for the people that walk out the door.
Totally, I think
Right.
that's really important that we evaluate the state of case management in our state and, as
After
things.
going through all that fee for service stuff that we went through and then people saying they're gonna leave in droves and they didn't, and now they're facing conflict free, but we thought for sure this was going to, but no. They wanna stay in case management, because there are people that they're not conflicted with, but there's also counties nearby, and we're allowing them to expand to those counties, so.
And I'll be one of those respondents. We try to do radio buttons and do, so you're picking A, B, C, D, so it's easier for us to look at the data and put some numbers, percentages on it. And other respondents, one of them that was getting out of case management, it was less than 6 months, 6 to 12, 12 to 24. Only one of those was within the next 6 months. So even those that are thinking about it, it's not like we're going to get overrun tomorrow.
Right, and they're all not gonna leave the same day.
Right.
Yeah.
All right,
So, good news. That's it for me.
all right, thank you, Kevin. Anybody have any questions for Kevin before we adjourn?
I don't have a motion to adjourn is all I have. It's 5:15.
I could agree with you more. Okay, meeting is adjourned at 5:19. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you. All right, Mark, you're done.
He's gone home.
Yeah.